out and found my own placement. And that was for a year. And it was unpaid work. And it was actually, why I love coming here is it was literally round the corner. And it was at Warner Music on High Street, Kensington. So I spent a year coming in and out of this area. And it has so many great memories for me. And the first lesson I kind of learned when I entered the music industry, my role was artist relations. So that was looking after like the artists when they came from America to the UK, taking them around for their different promo trips. And my first lesson was everything that glitters isn't gold, because we switch on the TV and we watch these guys, it looks like they've got money, they've got chains. It's all just, it's not real life. So that's the first thing I had to learn, is to really separate the things that we see on TV to what is happening on real life. A lot of people don't understand that the ones that you see that have all the money, have all the cash, it's probably, I would say it's about 2% of people that really get to that stage. Before then, we have what we call like a struggling artist. Like art is a commodity to some people, but it's not a strong enough commodity to make sure that everyone can make their bread and butter. So that was the first lesson I learned. The second lesson I learned whilst in this placement was about classism. I went in there very innocent, thinking that we're all the same. And I'll never forget, like there were these twins that worked there and we became friendly. And then they said to me one year, they said like, oh, what are you doing for Christmas? And I said, oh, I'm going home for Christmas. And they said, where's home? And I was like, Streatham Vale. And they said, oh, so you spend and celebrate Christmas in the ghetto? And I was like, what? I was like, yeah, don't we all? And they were like, no, we go to the country. We have people come and cook for us. I was like, okay, wow. That was the first thing. We are not the same. And what people don't realize is that working in media for a lot of people comes down to privilege. And that's because when you're working, the entry point, because so many people want to do it, is that you're not going to get paid, or you're going to get paid very little. I just hope for me, that was like 12 years ago. So I hope like right now that it doesn't exist. But that's why you see a lot of people that don't necessarily look like me and you working in those industries, is because the first thing is that how can you afford to work for free? Luckily for me, my mum lives in London. She's got a place in London. I could stay in London. So I was happy living on expenses, and actually, I was the slimmest then, so it wasn't a bad thing. So that was the first thing that I learned. And even such things like they would take you to these fancy dinners, and I didn't know like the knife and fork placement. And bless my boss at the time, like he would recognize it straight away, and he would say the one inside and then the one outside. So he would navigate it for me. And it was a very full-on work. So we'll get in about 9 and the work goes into the night. You have to go out, you have to be social. So I'd be getting home about midnight most nights for a year. And one day my boss said to me, he was like, so what did you do on your Saturday? And I was like, I spent it in the hairdresser. And he was like, what do you mean? So I was just like, yeah, he goes, don't you make appointments? And I was like, well, I do, but, like black hairdressers don't work on time. Like they just never work on time. And it was my first lesson also in inclusivity, because my boss was like a white gay man. And he said to me, oh, don't worry, I understand. And I was like, really? And he said, when you look at me, you see a white man. He goes, my dad was a white Jamaican. I grew up around women. He said, I know that hair you have in your head. I know that's a weave, girl. So the first thing he started doing, he goes, you work so full on that I want to give you like some time in the week. So he started letting me, every time we had quiet time, he started letting me go to get my hair done on Fridays, so that I wouldn't have to spend the whole hairdressers, or I wouldn't have to spend my whole weekend trying to get a weave done. So that was also, so he made me feel very comfortable in that space. And it kind of evened out the playing field, where I was with people that were from very privileged backgrounds. I would say upper class rather than middle class, upper class guys. So that was my early lessons in media. And then after that, I decided, oh my gosh, I don't want to go back to uni. Like I'm loving this media life. I was getting very lost in the sauce. But, I went back home and told my mum my plan, and she shut that down. So I had to go back to uni, but I luckily found a placement that was just further down in Kensington. And that's when I started my career in digital marketing. So I did that part-time whilst I was at uni. And for anyone that doesn't know what digital marketing is, it's evolved over the years. But who here uses things such as Facebook? No one? Is Facebook that old? No one uses it anymore. Twitter? Anyone uses Twitter? Instagram? Okay, so that's what they brought me in to do. So then now I started this job as a digital marketing assistant, social media manager. I'd never heard of that job before, but because I was so active online during my placement, like every time, you know what it's like, you bring the American rappers to the UK so that they have to do their promo and they would go missing. And then everyone would be looking for them. And I would be like to my boss, oh, I just saw on Twitter, they tweeted they're here or they're there. And then that's how I became like an asset to the team, because I was the only one that was very early on things such as like Twitter and Facebook. So then what happened is a girl that I met there, she had moved to Universal Music. That's where I moved to. So she was like, there was a job opening there. So then she told me about it. I applied. You know, with these things, like once you get in, it's all about who you know. So from then every job I've had is just based on the relationships that you've built. So she told me about the job, I went over part-time, and it enabled me to finish uni and also do that job. And then I had to get made redundant, unfortunately. And when I got made redundant, what they said to me is like they were keeping some people, and I felt like I was being rejected, like they didn't want to keep me, but they were like, why don't you do this social media thing, but you don't work from the office. You go and work from like a Starbucks or something for us, but we'll just pay you like a lump fee every month. And I was just like, I remember being so upset that they're not taking me with them to their team and they want me to work from a Starbucks. I was like, why can't I work with other people? Like, am I not good enough to work with humans? But essentially what I thought was a big negative thing turned out to be the start of my freelance career, because I did it, but I did it reluctantly because I didn't have any other work, so I needed the money. I was like, okay, I'll take this, whatever. But what I thought was a rejection at first ended up being what I still do today, and that's work freelance. So you're self-employed. Of course, it took a couple of years to really understand things like, okay, you got to do your own taxes, then you got to pay the tax man separately. All the money you get paid is not for you. You got to keep a bit aside. But those were the early lessons. I felt like it was something that I was forced into, but it was a great thing to do, because the thing with the media industry, like I explained earlier, you get in, there's not much money in it, you're working for free, and then after you've done the work for free for a year, it's like you're scrambling for the jobs. There's like, I would say there's probably like 500 people to 2 jobs. That's what it was like. So then obviously once they have those 2 jobs, they're not going to pay very much, because if you say no or you ask for more money, there's 500 other people just kind of like waiting for this job. And then I realized that, okay, the only way you can actually sustain yourself in this thing is that if I had this one client that's going to pay me a lump sum, a small lump sum every single week, every single month, if I multiply that, then actually I'm going to end up making more than if I took a full-time job. So then I clocked that, and then that's what I started doing. And most of my networking was actually just done at parties. You meet people, they start to know your face, and they ask you, what do? You do that. I remember there was a girl I met at a carnival. I went with my colleagues, we went to carnival, and the girl I met there became one of my, she was working on this book launch, and they became my first client that wasn't a music artist, and it became my biggest client as well. So I also learned that the networking and enabling to kind of like get deals was done through social settings. And when I would explain that to my mom, she's like, why are you always out? Are you a child of the night? And I'm like, no, mom, like this is work. Like, you know, I'm meeting people. This is how we do it. And eventually she was just like, okay, you do your thing. And then she saw that, I got to say, I stopped asking her for money. So she's like, oh, you're doing okay? I said, yeah, I'm doing fine. Don't worry about it. And then my career evolved from music. I did this book, then I started working with small businesses. I worked in advertising. Advertising was so dry for me. I was working with like, I see a camera, so I'm not going to say it, but I was working with like supermarkets, writing tweets for supermarkets. I was like, take me back to music. I was really suffering. But eventually, you know, God does his thing. And eventually I was headhunted to go to ITV. And they brought me in for 6 weeks to work on a show that's now become massive. At the time, it wasn't as big, but they brought me in to work on a show called Love Island. So I was like, okay, like, this is cool. We did that for 6 weeks. And that's when my career with the broadcasters started. So I started working on reality shows. You know, back then it was actually really exciting. But the older I get, I'm like, oh, you know, these shows I work on, they don't really change lives, you know? They don't change lives. They don't make a difference. But what that enabled me to do, again, is network. And from there, I moved into, just 4 years ago, it's going to be 4 years next month, I moved into podcasting, which is still a relatively new format in the UK. It's massive in America. It's relatively new in the UK, so you can just imagine the untapped potential it is back home in Zambia and across Africa. The Nigerians, I say, they're killing it when it comes to podcasting. But I moved into podcasting so I moved from ITV, I went over to BBC, where I still work with them today. I freelance for them amongst like other clients. And as I said, as I got on older, you realize how it can change people's perspective. The media is very powerful, right? Half of the things we see is just perception. And I've recently been doing some work with a company where with NATO actually. So as I said, like I've been trying to change what I work with. So I've recently just done a podcast with NATO that's coming out soon. And part of that was about how we can use these skills that we know to tell other stories. And we did some work on disinformation and misinformation. So every time, this job that I once loved in social media, I realized how dangerous it is in terms of like disinformation that is spread, the misinformation, even the things of like what we share in our WhatsApp groups. Like, don't even get me started on the things my mum sends into the WhatsApp. And I have to constantly tell her, Mum, did you fact check that? And she'll be like, no. She'll send random things, even videos from the village. Like, I don't know if you guys saw the one where it was the chicken wearing shoes. I said, Mum, stop it. What are you sharing? But, you know, like, it's very dangerous for the older generation. They just share things. Oh, during COVID, she'll believe anything that she was said. We need to do garlic, ginger, this. I was like, Mum, calm down. But you're realizing that this thing is very powerful. And now with podcasting, it gets a bad rep sometimes because anybody can do it. But the good thing is that now we're able to tell different stories and different narratives. And the other challenge I found when working in media is that I was one of very few Zambians. I think it was just me and one other guy that I've met in the media. Like, it was just the two of us. So constantly I'm around all my other friends and they're telling stories from Europe, from America, Eastern Europe, Africa. I have to sometimes remind my friends, like they're always like, okay, let's go Nigeria, let's go Ghana. I'm like, guys, you know I'm Zambian, let's go to Zambia. So my thing right now is about like figuring out how to use this skill to tell stories from the continent and tell stories from Zambia. I came here when I was 2, so it's even for me, it's a big educational journey. And I just think there's so many Zambians in the media just killing it. Like we had a song that was in Black Panther. We have anchors on BBC. Like it's just really amazing. And I heard someone say they've got money. So, you know, we just need some funding, please. So I'll come and talk to you after. But even we were talking and he mentioned a project that he's working on. And as soon as he said it, I was like, damn, like, let me get involved. Am I allowed to say what it is?
Yes. You can say it. Oh, on that note, I'll say thank you very much.